welcome.
Sorry, Cody just came in and left.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome, listeners. Welcome to Kyle and Cody's Cult Cinema Cast. This is second episode of season 2. We're back with this week, but this week we're doing something a little differently. This week it's Kyle and Victoria's Cult Cinema Cast because Victoria Koops is here.
Insert applause.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I brought her. She's gonna be on 4-ish times throughout the season. I can't remember exactly how many, but yeah, she's going to be one of my recurring co-hosts while Cody does some school and takes a bit more steps away from the podcast a little bit more. And I brought her on to start our little.
You can just say it, Kyle. I've replaced him.
So yeah, we're starting with our sub-theme of the season, which is the worst movies ever to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. This thing won the 1956 Oscar for Best Picture. Also won Best Cinematography, Color, because I guess that was divided back then. Best Film Editing, Best Music, and Best Writing, which I think is the most egregious one they gave, actually. Debatably.
This thing cleaned up. I can't even, because that's a lot of awards.
Nominated for Best Art Direction, Set Direction, Color, and Best Costume Design, Color, and Best Director.
Oh my goodness! How is that even possible?
Yeah. I'm not done. It beat out the 10 Commandments, like the 10 Commandments. I'm pretty sure, like the actual, that's
the
big one.
Actually. Oh no!
Yeah, the big one, not the this isn't some obscure one. I think that's the actual fancy 10 Commandments, and also The King and I.
What? It beat out The King and I? Oh,
I guess
my
the 56
goodness,
version, but I guess Also, another couple films called Friendly Persuasion and Giant, but I've never heard of them. So
they had completely trash standards in 1956. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, sorry. No. Directed by Michael Anderson. It's starring David Niven as Phileas Fogg. Contin Floss. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. As Passapartout.
Did you introduce the movie we're doing, Kyle?
Oh yeah, right.
I don't think you said the name.
Yeah. So yeah, what we're reviewing is Around the World in 80 Days, the 1956 version, which is directed by Michael Anderson, starring David Niven, Cantinflas, and Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah, I don't know who any of those people are.
Yeah, I know some of the lesser actors actually. Like Cesar Romero is in this. Frank Sinatra's in it for a little bit. Yeah, so a couple actors you recognize if you would.
I was gonna make a joke about how you're a complete movie nerd, and of course you know who the actors are. Except then you said Frank Sinatra, and I was like, can't make that joke because I know who that
also,
is.
Cesar Romero was the Joker.
Listeners. Yeah, I knew that too.
Yeah. So that barely counts. So yeah, this is a adaptation of the what's the guy's name?
Jules Verne, Kyle. Come on.
Yep.
Do your research.
It's an adaptation of Jules Verne. Jules Verne. Yeah, it's an adaptation of Jules Verne's novel of the same name. It is, which is a 1872 novel. So I think this takes place in 1872, basically. So a lot of things that don't make sense about that. But
before we get to this horrible thing called a movie, and I have some very strong opinions about that, I really want to talk about Jules Verne quickly because if the listeners remember from last time, I am a literary buff and a writer, and I really, really quite enjoy Jules Verne. We did a little sub-genre kind of cultural examination in one of my university lit classes, and we were supposed to look at a subgenre of fiction, and I picked steampunk. And when I was doing my research for what is steampunk, Jules Verne kind of came out as the father of that subgenre of science fiction. So with like um 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Around the World in 80 Days, these kind of wacky Victorian novels about scientists and like kind of critical thinking and big inventions and all of that stuff is quite paramount, I think, for the literary genre of science fiction. So Around the World in 80 Days is actually a novel pretty near and dear to my heart because of this assignment I had in university, and I learned a lot about it then. So I was actually quite excited when you said this was the movie we were going to be watching.
You were hoping it was the Jackie Chan version, though.
Yeah, no, okay. Kyle's like waiting for me to talk about Jackie Chan. Yeah, you're right. I also I was excited about Around the World in 80 Days because I thought it was going to be the Jackie Chan version, and then you looked at me very straight-faced and said, "Actually, we're doing the 1956 one." Like that was something to be excited about, and then I was so crushed. I should have just said no right then because I did not enjoy this movie, which is so heartbreaking because I really like Jules Verne, and then there was no Jackie Chan, and so it was all shit. It was all crap. So yeah, okay, you outed me. I definitely was hoping it was going to be the Jackie Chan version.
At about the hour and a half mark, I was wishing it was the Tweety Bird version because I mean, this movie's 3 hours long. Fuck,
Yeah,
it
you mean the
is.
hour and a half midpoint mark where there was an intermission?
Yeah. No, 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 no. The
And
intermission came at the
because
hour 52-minute wrong mark.
it's so much better.
Yeah,
So
so
much
it's
better.
2/3 of the
I
way through the movie instead of halfway through the movie where you'd expect it to be. So that's a
This
point against
thing,
the movie as far as I'm
honestly,
concerned.
there's so many points against the movie, and I'm very excited to talk all about them, but honestly, Kyle, this movie felt like it took 80 days to just get through the 3 hours. I was counting down the time, and yeah, and then there was an intermission, and I was ready to give up at the intermission, and I was like, I don't think Kyle's really my friend. I think he's my enemy, and he's trying to punish me for something."
I did get some angry text messages while you were watching it.
I think several. Several. Actually, we should put those up with the episode. Just screenshot all the nasty things I said to Kyle, and he just ignored.
I ignored a
Anyway,
few
sorry, I
of them. I
digress.
just
It was not the Jackie
yeah.
Chan version.
Yeah, I was kind of missing that Tweety Bird version a fair bit. But like my thesis for this review is kind of like this film is everything wrong with old Hollywood. Like I was
Yeah,
thinking about
that's a
this and I'm
good
like
thesis.
everything like if we think about like everything we could accuse old Hollywood of being, like decompressed storytelling, showing tons of more than they need to, racism, sexism, over length that maybe, but I think we can like safely tick off all the boxes of this abusing all those bad habits. Also, like
My thesis here, I haven't prepared
yeah,
one, but my thesis is Kyle's a horrible human. He wouldn't let me watch Jackie Chan. This movie needs to burn.
I didn't prevent you from watching the Jackie Chan version. I'm just saying you need to review the 1956 version. Like you can
What I should have done is I should have watched the Jackie Chan version, and then I should have which okay, I'll say it, the Jackie Chan version has its own issues. There are still
I
issues with that
imagine
film,
so.
um, but it is far beyond this one, like, it's far better than this one, so I should have just watched that one and then pretended I had seen the 1956 version, and like, I should have done this experiment if you had if you could actually recognize that I didn't do my homework. That would have been fun. I'm just gonna rebel like that the next time you have me on the show and I don't like the movie we're watching. I'm just gonna watch something else and review that, and you're gonna be
Well,
so confused.
the next one is thoroughly half the length, so that's it. And it's a musical, so
Well,
yeah.
that's nice. That's very good. Okay, so part of the length story I feel like we should share with the listeners just to illustrate exactly why I'm frustrated with you is because the night I was going to watch the movie, I worked late and it kind of didn't come together where I was going to have enough time to watch it. So I text Kyle and I say, "Look, I'm not going to be able to watch the movie tonight. We're going to have to push back recording by a day." Kyle then texts me and says, "Oh, that's fine. It's really long anyways." So the next day when I sit down to watch it, I'm kind of prepared for, oh, it's going to be a longer movie. It's 3 hours long. So I text Kyle, "You didn't tell me it was 3 hours." And yeah, so that was, again, he knew what he was getting me into, and he still forced me to watch this
Yeah,
movie.
like I thought at some points, like
Just for the listeners.
this is actually my bad because I like at several points was like, huh, should I warn Victoria how long this movie is? I'm sure she'll figure it out. I don't know.
Thanks. Thanks. See, and this is why I don't believe we're friends anymore. Anyway, joking aside, we are still friends. For anyone who's worried about our relationship, we're still friends. But yeah, not the Tweety Bird version, not the Jackie Chan version, if that's what you're thinking you're getting into.
So yeah, the budget is $6 million and it made 42 million on in the box office. Obviously, that's 1956 money, but that's a nice little turnover. Yeah, made by United Artists or distributed by United Artists. So yeah, I think we'll just get into the plot right now. I think it's going to be interesting about this because you get a very different picture about like what people were putting in Best Picture at the time. Because like I don't think like something like this would really make Best Picture nominee today. I mean, for multiple reasons, but not even by like if you ignore the racism, this would still win Best Picture. No, I don't think it would. Mostly because I don't think the Academy. And this is really a different era. This is back when like you know Star Wars got like a Best Picture nomination. You know, and, like because like that was a
Well,
thing that you could
okay, but
do.
that's Star Wars. At least it's entertaining.
Yeah, but like they weren't always opposed to like big spectacle pieces, like which this is. This is a big spectacle movie, obviously, and it's not like a big.
You just have to be so snobby about movies to appreciate this.
Yeah, no, it's. I don't think. I think even like movie snobs
I
would be
feel like
like,
I'm just cutting you off.
no, no. I think it's just a very different idea because I don't think Hollywood really doesn't even like entertain spectacle pieces anymore. So it's a nice little dip into the past there. Like I don't know that like even yeah.
Okay, okay. So if we're gonna be talking like, if we're gonna talk about spectacle pieces, and if we're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm such a film buff," which I'm not. Kyle's the film buff for all y'all listening to this. I am just a jaded friend who didn't want to watch Around the World in 80 Days, 1956. But okay, at one point in the early part of the movie, like probably the first third, before you got to intermission, at one point I was trying to, swallow my disdain and entertain the fact that this could be a good movie, right? Like I was trying really hard to be fair about my critical judgments on this movie. And I thought a few things, like it's quite charming, like the little la ti da ti da, we're going around the world, I'm so British. I was like, okay, it could be kind of charming, like the even the coloring of like the old film is kind of whimsical. And so I'm trying to like, oh, it's kind of like The King and I, or it's kind of um like Mary Poppins. It has a similar feel of like the coloring and just kind of being vintage and cute. And I'm quite like I'm hipster 101. I like vintage things. And so I'm trying to be very open-minded about it, but like after watching someone, I don't know, do a really terrible cultural appropriation dance for 5 minutes of, like, it just kept going on and on and on, and then a bunch of white men in a room being snobby about things. I was like, I can't even think that it's like vintage and cute because it was just so boring and
Yeah, this
horrible.
isn't even like cute, funny British. This is like full on. These guys are the guys that like
No.
exploit the South Africans for diamonds. Like these aren't the cute kind of English people. Like like leave that shit on the side.
No,
It's
it's so bad.
like you're not. It's not fun. It's
It's kind of funny though, because it's like the most horrible, like, not cute British people who are like the old boys club kind of smoking cigars, but it's also it was filmed in Hollywood, right? So it's like the American version of that. So you've got kind of like this distilled lens of oh, this is how British people behave, and really it's still very colonial because it was actually filmed in Hollywood too. So like I really liked your thesis. Your thesis was better than mine because it is really all the worst parts of Hollywood of the
Yeah,
era.
and speaking of this kinda, like, portrayal of different like, these Hollywood portrayal, I almost wanna give it credit. There's, like, a thought in the back of my head that, like, "Okay, this kinda, like, plays fast and loose with every culture it touches, in a way, because like, when they get to the United States, I don't think that, like, that's inherently, like, more ludicrous than what you get when you're in Spain for possibly. Like, it's, like, the most silly possible portrayal of this culture we can get, and that's almost something you could maybe, say, like, "Hey, they're not racist, they're just disrespecting all cultures equally," which isn't really a point in their favor, but, like, obviously the stuff that goes against,
Yeah, I don't know if disrespecting all cultures.
yeah, and it like,
I don't know if like
the
ma ma
yeah, the Indians and
sorry. I don't know. Can
yeah,
you
go
is it
ahead.
sorry. I don't know. I don't know if being like or silly about all cultures means that you're not racist. I
No,
think
no,
that's
it
an
doesn't. Yeah.
important distinction to make because you're right. It's very, like, over the top comical about most of the, like, stereotypes from all of these, cultures, right? Even American, but I'm not sure if that means that it's not racist because it definitely, like, I don't know, I think it's more problematic when it's, like, people of color, right? Where they're making fun of the Spaniards and the Asians and right? Like, and the Indians, like that whole scene in
Yeah,
India.
no,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
make no
Anyway.
mistake,
Ooh.
listener, the things they do to the, particularly the non-white people they visit are way worse, especially in India and, with the First Nations. The only one I'd say what
Mhm.
maybe debatably gets out unscathed is, like, maybe the Egyptians briefly when they're there, and that's just because I don't think they have, like, a big, they're not for one, they're not in the movie all that long, but I don't think they have, like, they don't have a big set piece scene, so they don't really get a point to be all, disrespected as much. Yeah, but that's the only one I can really think of.
They just don't have enough time to like, totally destroy Egyptian culture with a bunch of really offensive stereotypes. I
Yeah,
actually
my
yeah,
only
anyway.
joke was really about, the only joke I came up with that during that was, like, just about, like, British imperialism, so it wasn't even, like, a thing. So, yeah, I guess we'll get into the plot a little bit. The movie opens, with a big fucking, setup from, broadcast journalist Edward R. Murrow, who, does the prologue to the movie because this movie needs a prologue for some reason. They, yeah, they show you, the entirety of Le Voyage dans la Lune, if I'm getting that right. It's,
Yeah,
yep,
that sounded
in
right.
English, in
Yep.
English, that is, The Voyage to the Moon, if I'm yeah, A Trip to the Moon, depending on how you translate it. That is a very early, probably the first science fiction movie. It's not very long, it only takes a couple minutes. I mean, this entire scene is unnecessary, so it all makes the movie longer. You can probably cut a good 10 minutes out right here.
Oh my goodness, and I can't believe you actually watched it because, I definitely skipped
Yeah,
it.
no, he does a big thing and like, oh, this is kind of like in that movie which came out after the book was written is somehow inspirational to what's going here and like is I guess in a sense of like, oh, these are all both movies about like theoretical journeys around the world. I don't know. I don't think that's valid because, like, around the world in 80 days, it's theoretically possible travel more than yeah, it's like it's a balloon which they had at the time. Like maybe you could go with a maybe like in a couple of years you get the blimp and you're a little bit or the dirigible, whatever you want to call it, and that's maybe a bit more effective for what they're doing here. And obviously this was like before airplanes, but that kind of helps out here.
Well, I think okay, so I watched like I watched like the first, I don't know, like minute of this man in a smoking jacket and his big study with his armchair start talking about like his fingers are tinted. He's very Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, actually. And he's like, let me tell you a story about why this short film is so important, yada yada, snotty snotty. And I'm pretty sure from what like that minute that I actually paid attention to, was like he was saying that the short film was inspired by another one of Jules Verne's pieces. So I'm pretty sure he wrote like Jules Verne wrote a either a
Oh
novel
yeah,
or a
yeah.
short
No, you're
story
right.
that was titled From the Earth to the Moon. So I think that the tie-in was that like yeah, right? Like that the tie-in was that Jules Verne wrote both of these pieces and they were about these fantastical journeys, but I still think it was unnecessary to have that whole scene because the movie is 3 hours long, so why did we need a pre-movie like, scene? And it's not even like the Avengers, so why do I care?
Yeah, yeah, that is right. Actually, I got that wrong. It's Jules, based on Jules Verne's novel, 1865 novel, From the Earth to the Moon, which I guess they're both the same. And like, I guess you could say, oh, Jules Verne was a guy who liked to write books about exploring stuff. But like, I feel like we don't do this every time an author gets a movie made out of their book. Like, I'm sure I could come up with like some like bring up like two Asimov books. They're not going to make me put out like a 10-minute short film of like a different Asimov book when I start up a thing of iRobot or something.
Maybe we should do that. Maybe we should bring that back and just give writers all the movie rights, you know? Like, just, "Oh, you're selling us the movie rights for your, you know, your first book series? Well, we're gonna also turn this short story you wrote in college into a short film to go before your movie. You're welcome." I could get behind that.
But yeah, maybe not in something that's 3 hours long.
I'm being ridiculous, I know. So we can move on because we don't want to be like around the world in 80 days where it takes so long to get through the
I'm hoping
content.
this won't be. I don't think we'll stick as long as like make a 3 hour podcast like I did with the finale. So I've had enough of those.
We could.
We're not going to.
I'm
Yeah.
just throwing ideas out there, Kyle, but if we need to pad the runtime of this episode, we could just insert some tap dancing into the middle and like just
Yeah.
confuse people, and then maybe we could have like some cool sound effects of like appropriating a bunch of different cultures, you know, like having their music just playing for 15-second clips and a totally ridiculous montage. Like just some ideas, just some
Yeah,
ideas.
I can go get one of my friends that can pretend to do a powwow or something in the background, and I would be about equally as offensive.
Oh no.
No.
Oh no. And it has to be all the help to do that, they all have to be white people with, like, special effects makeup and, like, you know, totally horrible costumes that just vaguely look like they're from that region of the world, like, that's the only way but listeners wouldn't be able to see all of that, so we'd have to take a lot of documenting
That is also
pictures,
something to note.
and I think that's generally
That
frowned
is
upon.
something to note. All the costumes for this were made by the movie. Like, I think this has something ludicrous like 30,000 costumes or something that are made for the extras they use. Some of the extras are legitimately people of color, but there is also like a lot of brown and yellow facing going on. All the major actors are well, some of them are people of POC or at least Hispanic, but a lot of them aren't playing the right races. The only one who's real, the only non-white guy who's actually playing his own race is the guy playing Passepartout, Conteflas,
Hmm.
because he is a Mexican actor. I think this is maybe his first English language movie.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Passport 2 as we're like here um because he's an it's an interesting character. Like I think that this is the role that Jackie Chan plays in the one that I would have wanted to watch. And if you're looking at this story from kind of like a colonization lens, it's definitely a story that glorifies like the white people's influence globally, right? Because you go through all these cultures and like kind of the only important people are white people that are zipping through or around the world, right? Except you've got Passport 2 who is this kind of like slapstick funny character in the film here. And like you're right, he's a person of color, he's a Mexican actor. And so that's, okay, thank you for actually doing something correct and getting like an authentic actor to play that role. But like I find that it's really problematic that he's like the token person of color, and then he is a goofball and like really a caricature. That's the word. He's a caricature for the entire movie because he has like two things, and it's like womanizing and being
Yeah,
goofy.
and like I think if he was on his own, he'd almost be defensible because like he wouldn't be the first like
Right.
segregation era person POC character that like people look back on fondly. And like I've always like there's tons of like quote unquote token black guys that are like beloved characters. But yeah, they hired this one Mexican actor to play a Mexican character, but there's so many other times in the movie where they don't do that. I think they're like Cesar Romero. I think he's maybe Hispanic, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's playing actually an Arab man. So there's even that. That's not
Hmm.
really a better thing.
And if we want to talk about kind of the intersection of like racism and sexism, we have the only female in the entire movie, like, well, the only female who has lines in the entire movie, the Indian princess. I don't know, does she get a name? Does she actually have a name in the film besides Indian princess?
Yeah, her name in the movie is
Okay,
Awuga.
so oh
Yeah.
dear. Okay, so she is very clearly a white woman
Yep.
playing an Indian princess. Literally, that's what they call her. And in Indian, they mean like East Indian. And we meet her when she's about to be sacrificed. It's a whole thing, and like the white man comes and saves her. But she's like they're not even trying to make her look more like not white. Like she's very, very, very obviously a white woman. And so it's really problematic on two levels because she is, I think, the only woman who has a speaking role in the entire film. And she's very clearly not like the culture that she's supposed to be for the story
Yeah,
they're telling,
Shirley
right? And
MacLaine
so
is her
it's
name.
like,
Yeah.
oh, you've got just a yeah, that is not an East Indian name. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, they didn't yeah, they don't even try to like though I don't know that putting her in brown face is the answer here, but no, it's not good. No, yeah.
No, no, but it's like it's just so
Yeah.
blatantly like horrible. And then she's really like I usually tend to be like very sympathetic for like the women characters, especially in old cinema, because like sexism, obviously, and like I think that even having a woman like involved in the storytelling process is really important. Of course, representation is like a big passion of mine. So, like you're saying with Passport 2, like like at least he's a Mexican man playing the role. And so I'm like, well, at least there's a woman in the whole movie, but like that's just not enough, right? And we know that now, I think that just having that token character or that token role isn't enough. But in this, like Oh, and one of the issues I had is that she's so like, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear on the podcast?
Yeah, yeah, no, this is a sweary podcast.
Okay, it's a sweary podcast. I like that. She's so fucking doe-eyed. She's all like, "Oh, Phileas Fogg, you're so wonderful. Meh, meh, meh. I love a man who's punctual." And I'm like, "What? What?" Because she's just so not believable because she's what a man of the time, right? The 1950s wants a woman to be. Like she's a little bit like cuz she's this Indian princess, so she's a little mysterious and alluring, but then at the same time she's totally like meek and mild, and she just looks at him with these doe eyes, and he's all like, "Oh, tut tut, I'm so British." And she's like, "Oh, that's so hot, get in my pants." It's like that is said no one ever. Like,
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't think
Ugh,
yeah, no, she's,
frustration.
I think even if they had, like, beyond all the odds, hired an actual Indian actor to play her, I think even still her portrayal is she's actually would have been the worse off between her and Passepartout, which are the quote unquote POC characters in
This
this.
is true.
Because I don't
Yeah.
think I'll get more into this once we introduce her and we can go through the plot a bit. But yeah, I don't. Whereas Passepartout, I get the
Kyle Kyle's like, sorry. Kyle's like, "Oh, we'll get to talking about this when we move along with the plot." And I'm like, "I'm here to sabotage your game plan because I'm just going to go off on a
I
rant."
mean, there's not much
Sorry.
plot.
Okay,
We
we can
have
go back to the
times.
plot now. I don't
uh,
know where we were.
so yeah, we're introduced to Britain. We're introduced to Victorian Britain, which is incredibly posh and stereotypical. We're introduced to the Reform Club, which is a big gentleman, fancy British people. The governor of the Bank of England is there. Oh yeah, for the American listeners, in the Commonwealth, the banks have governors, or the main banks.
We're real
Yes,
fancy here in the
yes.
Commonwealth.
So they're doing that, and we meet eventually. Get introduced to Butler, who like a team of butlers. One of them, who is Passepartout, eventually takes a job from a butler who is quitting his assignment to go be the butler for Phileas Fogg, who is notoriously terrible and is like incredibly punctual and wants everything exactly perfect. They make his example of him wanting his toast to exactly however many degrees, and one of the guys is like, "How do you measure the heat of toast?" And good question. This is 1870. Do they have like those? Do
Yeah.
they have those like turkey thermometers that you like shove in a turkey? I imagine you do it like that, but I don't know if they have those.
These are the essential questions that the movie tries to bring forth and answer for you because we really need to know how to measure the heat of toast. And it's like there's just so much extra that could have been cut, and like the movie would be so much
And
better.
like I probably I'm about to have like 3 points here, and that probably sums up like the first 20 minutes of the movie. Like there's this thing where we're introduced to Passepartout, and he introduces himself to Phileas Fogg. We get a news article. We get some gossip between the members of the Reform Club that says the Bank of England has been robbed, and then we have Phileas Fogg playing cards with some of the other members of the Reform Club, and he very conveniently makes this bet of hey, I bet I can make it around the world in 80 days. I have 20,000 pounds just sitting around, and if I win, I'll give it to you, and if you win, you all have to give me 20,000 pounds. And eventually, all these rich guys take the bet. This is set up to make us think that because no one knows where Phileas Fogg gets his money, so that this is meant to give us the idea that Phileas Fogg robbed the Bank of England and is spending this 20,000 pounds in order to make it so that and then he robbed the Bank of England for 20,000 pounds and is going to use this bet as an excuse to get out of the country with his money. Now, I'm
Right,
going to
yeah.
spoil
And
this.
okay, okay. So But, like
Yeah,
oh,
I need
okay,
to
go
spoil
ahead.
this all right
Spoilers.
now. I'm just gonna quit everyone from wasting their time. He didn't rob the bank. He straight up did not rob the bank. No,
Ooh.
they reveal it, like, at the end of the
The
movie.
white man didn't do the
Yeah, no,
crime.
no, they straight up, like, reveal, like, he gets arrested by this investigator character who's following him out through the movie toward the end after the, First Nation after they get all out of, after they're immediately when they arrive in England, they're arrested by this one character who's, been tailing them for half the journey, and they're in jail for, like, 12 hours, and then the investigator comes and is like, "Oh, we caught the real criminal. What do you know? It wasn't even you." And that happens all off screen. This entire thing was a massive red herring, and I'm not going to entertain it any longer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay, so there's a few things that are really annoying about this whole like, everything that Kyle just said, it's huge, massive red herring, doesn't really quite make sense in terms of storytelling,
The world's
like,
laziest
setup
hand
and stuff, like, good storytelling setup
the
and stuff.
world's laziest red herring.
Right, right, like
I have never been, like, so
okay, and
insulted by
then
one.
the other beef I have with this is that they've made such a big deal up until this point that Phileas
Yep.
Fogg, there we go, Phileas Fogg is like this very punctual to the T organized gentleman. And so he's very eccentric and he's all like my breakfast will be served at 8:42 and then he just dares or gets like bedded into going on this wild 80-day extravaganza worldwide tour and he just like does it, you know? So in my brain that doesn't make sense for a like I mean I guess he's eccentric but he's all about time, right? Like they've made such a big deal about him being like to the T punctual with his time and he's got like two wrist watches or two pocket watches or whatever and then all of a sudden he's like oh I'm just very like go with the flow and I can absolutely uproot my life in 10 minutes and go on a big huge tour of the world. I'm like no, a guy like this he's gonna sure he'll make that bet but he's gonna be like and a week henceforth from now I will depart on a Sunday at 12:36 because it goes into my plan, right? Like it just didn't it was really spontaneous for someone who is so like eats the same thing on the same day, is gets his toast thermometer out for his breakfast, right? Like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and, like, the entire assumption you have throughout the movie is like, "Oh, he stole this money, so he's, running from the law," or is, like, at least, doing stuff to die down, or, like, he's secretly this daring jewel thief who is, like, trying to play one on everyone, and he, like, does his crimes through meticulous planning. But no, that's nonsense. So that makes everything you just said 100% true because we've been robbed of any other indication that he's anything other than what you just said.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense. It's very, very confusing because like I don't really know why we're supposed to care about him.
Yeah, and he's not well traveled also, which is one thing you'd think that maybe like, oh, he's maybe done like this in parts throughout his past, but like he hasn't been anywhere. He doesn't speak any languages. He doesn't show any like fancy appreciation for any of the cultures he visits. Like if it wouldn't want
Well, and isn't he kind of isn't he kind of a recluse though
yeah.
too?
And like we're never introduced to where he got his money.
Like,
So
cause at the beginning, when the butlers are okay, so at the beginning where the butlers are, like, the one butler's crying because he's such a terrible person, they're all speculating on who he is and what we know about him. So he's kind of also this weird eccentric recluse too. Like, obviously, the boys at the whatever club know who he is, but it seems to be that there's just a lot of mystery around him and like you said that's playing into the red herring in the story but but you never get satisfied knowing more pieces about who he is or what he does or why he does it. Like I feel like at least in the Jackie Chan version, there's a little more character development, and there's like zero
Yeah.
in in this one. And it's 3 hours long. They had so much time to do so much character development, and they just did
And
none
like
of
every
it.
British person in this is just the most insufferable aristocrat ever. Like they're just like like the most insufferable version of
Yeah.
British we've, and we talked about this. I'm not going to lay on it too much. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it could be said again. Like British people in this movie are assholes. Not that is not a global generalization. That's just in this movie. That is how they're portrayed. And again, going back to kind of the racist stereotypes, right? Because literally every person you meet in this movie that is British is just aristocratic and insufferable, and they're also all men. So it's this very one-sided portrayal of British culture too, even there though they're there, like even though the British culture is being portrayed in a very positive light compared to the other cultures, which are like very vibrant and, kind of loud, but all in the wrong way.
Yeah. Like there are some things to like poke fun at the British in this movie, but it's very much from a position of like, hey, we're very ingenuitive and like we're really good. I don't know if like I'd quit say that they've made like a definitive statement that like the British are the absolute best or whatever, but it isn't. It does very much play into like stereotypes of like, oh, it's assumed that we're so fucking fancy. So the
Yes, yeah. That's a
yeah,
good way of saying it. It's assumed we're so fucking fancy.
so we get Phileas Fogg takes the bet and goes home to and starts to call on Passepartout, who's doing some butler stuff. He's starting up his gas lamp because they have gas lighting in this house, which he leaves on. He leaves the gas lamp on, and I was half concerned that his house was going to be blown up by the time they got back. So
And again, zero character development for Phileas Fogg because they're in the air balloon later on, and Passport 2 very comically says, "Oh, I left the gas on." And Phileas Fogg is like, "Oh, that's going to come out of your salary." And it's like, I feel as though Phileas Fogg, this very like punctual and very um like what's the word I'm looking for? He's just very studious and to the T, right? I feel like his character would immediately get someone to turn that off because he's like detail oriented, right?
yeah, I mean that there's no telephone, so you can't really tell anyone. And also, when he says
There's
he's going, that's going to come
telegraphs.
out of his pay. Well, when he says that's going to come out of his paycheck, the house is going to explode. This poor little butler with like torn up pants is going to have to pay for this rich guy's entire house. Like this is the
Uh
context of what he's saying. Like I go through this entire joke of the assumption like this entire house is going to explode and this guy's going to be in debt forever.
we're gonna start talking about the exploitation of the working class because that's definitely the direction we're headed. We already briefly talked about sexism and racism. Now we're going to be talking about classism and the exploitation of the working class because exactly.
And Passepartout does refer to him as master throughout the movie. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite problematic, isn't it?
Fuck, I went all the way down. Do do do. Oh geez, my writing gets bigger as I go down my notes of like me slowly
It's
getting
because your hand
angrier.
gets tired.
I mean,
The larger the
I think
writing,
I'm
the angrier Kyle is.
possibly. Okay. I'm never doing electronic notes again.
I really hope you keep all of this in the podcast. I really hope that you just have
It'll.
this
I'll
this
skip.
one
I'll skip
minute
some parts.
section of you scrolling and going fuck 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 fuck.
They go to a train station in order to buy train tickets. Presumably, they're going to take a trip across the English Channel and then catch a train on the mainland Europe. And Passepartout is arranging to buy the tickets. During this scene, we get a bunch of like examples of Passepartout's lusting around. of him like asking about the women of the different places. Some glimpses of very 1870s caricature-ish travelogue stuff. But he's interrupted about halfway through this by Phileas Fogg saying, "Oh, cancel the train tickets. There's been a avalanche about just in the Alps, so we can't take a train anywhere meaningful. So we need to find out some other idea." The travel agent recommends that he take a balloon, which Phileas Fogg buys because he apparently is able to learn how to operate this from a manual that the guy has lying around. So I guess it's that easy. He doesn't really know how it
Yeah, I
works.
guess. I
Yeah.
don't know. None of this makes sense to me. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, so they start off, they take a big, photo op as they, fly away. They make their way over the Alps just narrowly. They, like, at one point, Passepartout scoops a bunch of snow from a mountain tip so that they can cool some, champagne in it. So, yeah.
Again, we've established there's zero character development in this entire movie. So I guess it was just for kind of a weak joke, like a weak gag, because what was the purpose of him scooping snow off of a mountain? All it really made me think of was, what did they pack for food? How are they eating? They're in a balloon. How long have they been in the balloon? Like, there was just so many questions I had, because if they're just drinking bubbly up there, I'm like, I'm not sure they're going to survive 80 days of traveling.
They yeah, they were up there for, like, a week or something, I think, so, like, they slept and, like, went bathroom in this bucket.
Yeah, gross. The implications of this are so gross.
Yeah. Yeah, he should be filthy. They only pack 3 changes of clothes each, so that's another thing. Yeah, so they, fly over, we get some glimpses of the French countryside, of castles and stuff, and eventually they end up in Spain because 'cause they're going through the, Mediterranean Alps and not the Swiss Alps, so they end up in the southern part of Spain, which, Passepartout manages to help him, navigate because he actually speaks Spanish, and Phileas Fogg does not speak anything other than English because, yeah, he's not even well traveled. Does he even speak Latin? Who knows? He refers to Spanish as, "Oh, what is this bizarre language? It's Spanish. You
'Cause
live like across the river from them. There's no way you don't know what a Spaniard
yeah,
is. Not even you're that isolationist."
and he's so confused. He's like, "Why aren't we in France?" It's like, or he doesn't realize they're not in France because he says, "Why aren't they speaking French?" And you're like, uh does it sound like they're speaking French? Like, it's very, very, very dumb because he's supposed to be kind of an intelligent character, I think. He's not. He's annoying AF.
Yeah, like, what does he really do to prove he's intelligence? He's able to calculate his travel plan very well, I'll give him that, but other than that, that just means he's good with maps and knows the theory
Well,
of, travel, yeah.
I think he's supposed to be an inventor though of some sort. Isn't that the actual story? Is that he's technically an inventor? Because okay, so now I'm like, well, I can't remember the book, but I'm pretty sure he's an
It's not
inventor.
clarified
And
in this because
no.
this kind of implies that he stole the money, remember? So
Mhm.
I guess so as far as I know, he's just another British aristocrat, which get their money from, I don't know, stealing it from the Irish. I don't know where they get their money from.
Exploiting the Irish, I think, is what you want to say. There's so many problems with this movie.
So yeah, Passepartout gets a tip that he can maybe get a boat trip from a guy named Abdul, who is played by a white guy, of course, who has an assistant played by Cesar Romero, who is Hispanic or Spanish, perhaps. I don't know for sure. I'm not a Cesar Romero expert. So they go to meet him at night because he sleeps during the day, and they get a glimpse of this Spanish party because this entire movie is just an excuse to like get a glimpse of like a dumb racist travel commercial.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I'm really sick of people talking about multiculturalism actually, but that was one thought that I had. I was like, "Oh, maybe they were going for like, hey, let's celebrate the cultures of the world, but let's do it in the worst possible way with, a very white gaze kind of fashion." And so then you get all the flamenco dancers and the like siesta kind of excitement stuff, but it's just so so bad. And like most of the dancers aren't like, well, maybe some of the Spanish dancers. I didn't research this at all, but I definitely know that later on in the movie, like when they're in India, all the women dancers are white. Like they're not doing like they're not even doing a good job of the dances that would be what they're trying to replicate. And so it just and it was so long. The scene we're talking about right now in Spain, this at this, like, nightclub party thing, it went for so long and just unnecessarily because, like, they could have done, like, a taste of that, but it's this whole big thing, and it just kinda got worse and worse as it went.
It goes on forever, and then Abdul comes into the room, and then it goes on some more so that Passepartout can impress Abdul with some of his dancing, and Abdul says he'll loan them, they'll let him ride his boat if Abdul participates in a matador event tomorrow, because apparently everything's going on during this. Does this like is this like an actual thing where like there's a bunch of like running s- fancy Spanish sporting events going on, and then 60 days later there's a election in the United States? Is this a thing that can be happening? Does this make sense? I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that, but yeah.
No, I think nothing about this movie makes sense, and like you well, okay, I'm willing to distill my disbelief, when I watch a movie that okay, there could be like the running of the bulls, I think is what they're kind of going for in Spain, and then 60 days later have a US election of some kind. But like I just feel like it went, like, too long. Each scene where you're going through these kind of cultural events and stuff, it's just so long. The pacing of this movie sucks. It's so terrible because it kind of is meant to be a fast-paced, I think, kind of race, sort of. You're feeling like they're racing the clock to get back to make this bet happen, but then this leisurely pace of let's spend 15 minutes just watching like dancers dance and like totally botch those dances, and then we're going to do another whole 15-minute scene where you're just watching a guy like stare down a bull, which
I'm
I have
sure we hit
other
the hour
like
mark during that.
oh,
I'm
it's
sure we hit
so
the
horrible, and
yeah.
it's like the first stop. It's the first stop on their, like, global
Yeah.
racism tour, and so I was just like I think this is where I text you and I said, "We can no longer be friends," because this was really horrible. The first stop outside of, Victorian England is this Spanish scene where things are going like just weird. And then we have a whole Matador contest thing that Passepartout is like not prepared for, but he does it and it's goofy and comical because that's what he's all about. And it just the whole thing, you're right. Like by this point we've hit maybe an hour of the I don't know, it must be over an hour of the movie and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, we still have the whole rest of the world to go through."
Yeah, they're not even out of Europe. So they do like a bullfight with just like the tiniest little bull I've ever seen. It has big horns, but not
Yeah, it
even
wasn't
like
very
that big
impressive.
horns. No, yeah, like my bulls at home are like up to my shoulder, and this thing is like up to like chest height of Passepartout, who's one of the shorter ones. of the shoulders of the
Yeah, Kyle
matadors. Uh,
for the listeners at home, Kyle's a giant. Kyle's like he's like 7 feet tall, and so his bulls are up to his chest. They're like giant, like Greek mythos bulls, and this bull was just the puniest, tiniest, most disgusting bull Kyle's ever seen. He was so disappointed.
I am a rancher though. The 7 feet tall is not so much true, but I am a rancher, so I see enough bulls around.
No,
That's also
everything I
seems a
said
little
was 100% true. You can fact check me.
seems a little malnourished, maybe even. It looks pretty thin.
Mhm. Yeah, it didn't look healthy, which also made me very sad because, like, again, we want to talk about everything wrong with Hollywood at that time. Like, probably treating animals humanely was not at the top of their list, would be my guess. And so this bull is tiny and it's like super skinny.
So they do this for a little while. I guess they win. I don't know. I don't know how you win bullfights.
It was very unclear. It was very, very, very unclear in the movie because all of a sudden the crowd just like goes crazy. And I'm like, what did he even do? Like, what did he do that was exciting?
So yeah, that happens. We cut back to England to see that they've established a betting floor, and this is a big, now big betting thing in England, which is probably the most realistic thing in the entire movie. I can believe that the English would bet on this because that's a thing they do. It's
Yep.
a big industry, I believe. Yeah, absolutely possible. We don't need to cut back to it like five
Gambling
times,
at a
but
boys' club.
yeah,
Yeah, unnecessarily
yeah.
again. But like gambling at a boys' club is very believable and it is like I don't know. It kind of they try to reveal some of the plot around this chase going on after Phileas Fogg and Passport 2 like that's happening, right? So, yeah, anyway, no.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
So they end up in Suez, which is the Suez Canal in Egypt. So they're ending up there. This is fairly short. I think they meet up with the investigator who just follows them around. I've told you what this ends up with, so I'm going to skip over a lot of what he does. He sucks pretty bad. He manipulates Passepartout a lot, which is all yeah.
Let's talk about India. Let's talk about India because I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
that's the
no,
next stop on
yeah,
their
no, they
tour.
fly. Yep, they take the boat. They end up in Bombay, India, which is where the racism against the people of color starts, and
Oh,
it's pretty bad. Like we've talked a lot about how like the basic stuff's bad, the costumes. A lot of these people are in brown faced. There are some Indian extras in this because they do have to make use of some. There's like a huge number of extras in this movie, so they couldn't possibly have just brought them all along. But they do this, so they start getting on a train ride, which they were told was complete, but it's not. So they end up in the middle of the jungle with this British officer. Because, by the way, India at this point is still in control of the British Empire, so that's why they're able to get around. I believe Suez also has some British influence at this point too, so that's a big deal. So they're basically been hip hopping through British imperial holdings to get where they are. They take the train to the end of its tracks. They pay some lady to buy her elephant from her, and use that to travel through the jungle. When they stop for the night, they catch a glimpse of this apparent death cult. They talk about how there's a Indian death cult lying around, which fuck off. No, there isn't. There's no Indian death cult. Uh,
I love that. Just fuck off. Kyle's just like big middle finger.
they say, oh, they're worshiping the goddess of death, Molly or Kali, or it's I don't know.
Love
But
and
yeah,
death.
and
The goddess of love and death. And
yeah,
like let's talk about what they call this Indian death cult.
yep,
Do you remember what they're called?
no,
So they're called
it's
thugs they're called thugs. They're like I don't know, he says some name and then he abbreviates it to thugs. And so I was just like, "What?" Like the language around around what we're, what they're like categorically calling the POCs in this very racist portrayal of like Indian tribal culture, and like the problematic culture are called thugs. And I was just like, "What?" Like for real? Like, oh my goodness. So that's what they're called. And then you see them marching and they're going up like a funeral pyre, right? Like they've got like this procession, and the white men are, well, in Passport 2, are in the bushes, and they're all like, "Oh, what is going on?" And that's when you're introduced to the female character, because she's an Indian princess. Remember, we talked about that, portrayed by a white woman, and she's married to a man who's recently deceased. And so, that part of this cultural tradition is that she will be sacrificed to their deity, on a pyre, on his funeral pyre. And so I don't know. There's a little boy, like a little like Indian guide boy that's like taking them through the forest, and he like narrates kind of for them. He translates what's going on, and he's like, "No, she's a very nice person and she doesn't want to be burned." And so they're all like, "Oh yes, we are chivalrous. That's not the word. Chivalrous white men, and we're going to be her white knight and ride in there and save her." But then they can't like fucking come up with a plan. so so the white men are sitting there in the tree being like, "What should we do?" And we need 75 men to execute our plan. Meanwhile, Passport 2 is like, "I'm actually going to go save the day now."
Yeah, they make fun of the British. The British is just like, oh yeah, your plans only work if you have like a 75 armed men to help you out, which fair. And then Passepartout somehow sneaks into the thing they've set up for the funeral pyre, and has snuck into the place of the dead's husband, and is like pretended to rise from the dead to spook everyone, and then spooks some rays and uses that to save Auga.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
then she
I
falls in
you
love with Phileas Fogg.
yeah, like
Like,
like she
what?
starts falling in love with him, and I'm like, fuck off! You're not even following the rules.
Yeah, I'm
like
like, he
thematically,
did nothing.
yeah, no, thematically, isn't this how it works? Is like you're like this is an old sexist movie, isn't Passepartout supposed to get the girl because he won her because she is a prize to be possessed and won? Isn't this how this works? I guess not. No, it's
Exactly.
just handed off to the white guy. Uh, but
How
I have one more
refreshing.
thing
How refreshing that they broke those stereotypes that that the
to
man who
make it
didn't save
worse.
her from
Yeah,
the funeral pyre to make it worse.
and not even like making like a point of it being like a funny thing where like she shuns him, where she's like, "Oh, thank you for saving me. Oh, who's this handsome devil?" Like that would have been at least been funny.
Yeah, no, it's just bad. Sorry, you said you
uh
had one more thing about this scene.
yeah, you know who actually did this, like this thing where you throw the wife onto the funeral pyre? The fucking Vikings.
Oh,
This is a
please.
thing that white people
Oh,
did.
yes. I was like, please. I was gonna say, please tell me it was white people who used to do this, because
This was a thing that was recorded by an Arab historian or an Arab traveler who has observed like a Viking ritual in I think Russia, and had observed this happening. So this isn't something like I don't know that the Indians ever practiced this, but Vikings definitely, at least some Vikings did practice it. Maybe not like as a frequent thing, but maybe for like high ranking people, and maybe only in certain places, but no, that's the only real life example I can think of where this actually happened.
okay. And so then that reminded me of another thing that I was like really annoyed about this scene. Like she's rescued by Passport 2, and then she falls in love with Phileas Fogg for some reason. She gives this like bullshit confession of how she just thinks a man should always be punctual or something. And I'm just like, whoa, that's very strange. But then like the other piece of her character identity is that she was raised or educated in Britain. Like she went to England to be educated as a young girl, and she hasn't seen her husband since. So she's been married to him for like since she was 7 or whatever, and then she went away to get educated, and she hasn't even been a wife really because she was gone. So then she's now back and going to be sacrificed, and that's like I guess why she fell in love with the, like, uptight British guy? I don't know. It was just a weird, like, let's have an Indian princess, but, let's make her a white person first.
Yeah, this raises several questions. Because, like, okay, so this society is sexist enough to throw women on their, I presume, what's the word? Arranged husband's funeral pyre. They're sexist enough to do that, but they'll let their little girl go to college in a foreign land.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't know, and, I guess imperialism, question mark?
maybe, but the only thing I can think of is like that's like a status move for them. It's like it's like, hey, we're so rich, we sent our daughter halfway across the world to go to school. And so it's a I guess that could be a status thing, but I'm stretching. I am reaching for some vague explanation here.
Because she's technically supposed to be tribal, right? Her character is technically supposed to be because
Yeah,
I know in
rural.
Imperial Britain you're like when you're looking at Indian history and in the like occupation, the imperial occupation of India, there were women, like there were families, right? You would have like colonels and all of these military people who would be living in India in the colonies with their families, right? And warring with the indigenous peoples. And I think so the book I'm thinking about is like The Little Princess, right? There are other books where a white family would be living in colonial India, and the little girl would be referred to as a princess, but I'm pretty sure that's not the case here and that she's actually supposed to be tribal, right? I don't know. It just again, many questions raised,
I'm hardly an expert on
none of them
Indian
answered.
culture, but then again, as a guy who's not an expert in Indian culture, I don't go about making movies about Indians. Like that'd be the thing I'd be stricken to do. Like if I was like, hey, I have this scene in India, I better go research India or the time period of India I'm working
Yeah.
with. Or like that seems to be a thing I would do. Like it's just a
Right, and
common bit of respect.
if you ever produced or wrote or did anything that was vaguely this, like, problematic, racist, appropriative kind of stuff, I would call you out so hard, don't worry. I won't let you do this to yourself because it's not
I
good.
feel like I know enough to like get beta readers of like the given culture. And another thing here, I gotta point this out because this is they're like the thing about them not like hire because we're about to get into the worst part of like where a lot of the you'll as we go through the China and Japan in the next two sections, we're gonna get like a lot of white actors in I'd say yellowface, but I don't even know if they put up the effort. And the reason they don't put in the effort is because they think we're too stupid to tell the difference. Like, I'm not gonna give them any like, oh, why do you even care? They just wanted to hire the actor they had on hand. It's like, no, they think you're too stupid to tell the difference and that you won't care. And that attitude allows like makes it difficult for like POC actors to get work. That's all this does. Pretending
Mhm,
like it's okay to have like a white actor play a non-white role is just stealing work from POC actors. That's all it is. That's
absolutely. Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
dress it up like they're not they are absolutely capable of hiring actors of the correct race. And like only in like this insular especially
Well, and there
today.
are tons. Yeah, there are tons of, like, POC marginalized actors. Like, another one that really frustrates me today is, like, when we don't get, like a trans person to play a trans role or, like, an LGBTQ person, a queer person to play a queer role. Like, I'm like, I don't understand even the justification for that anymore because, well, and it's what you said, that Hollywood is just hoping that you're too lazy to do your research or to pay attention, right? And I feel like with gender and with sexuality, it's a lot more, um, it's not quite as obvious, right? Like when you have a white person playing an Indian role like a Chinese or Japanese role, it's quite, like, I think it's quite obvious that they're, not doing the representation piece well or appropriately. But then, like, in terms of gender and like sexuality, I mean, sometimes it's harder to discern what someone identifies as, or what their pronouns are, their gender roles are, right? But it still happens all the time. Like, what was that movie that came out and it got like a lot of critical acclaim about the trans woman, the Danish trans woman, I want to say. It had the guy who played in like the Fantastic Beasts, Eddie, I can't remember his name.
Redmayne? Oh yeah, I think I've heard of this. I don't like know the names, but Eddie Redmayne is the actor you're thinking of, I think.
Yeah, and he portrays like the first trans woman to be like kind of on historical record, and he's not trans. So he does a
Yeah.
beautiful job. The portrayal is beautiful, but and it's kind of, the story is about his character transitioning, so going through kind of the first, like, I guess, documented medical transition. And it's quite beautifully done, but it's problematic because he doesn't have any concept of what that means to walk that story, right? So then I think we see kind of the same thing happening today, maybe less frequently with race, because people have come down really hard on race, but it's still happening in other marginalized groups, right? Um, Anyway, so let's move on and talk about Asia, because I have a lot of thoughts about this, and we'll get there when we talk about Japan, but like let's continue our around the world in 80 days.
Yeah, the only plot point I have left to bring up about this is that they take Auga with her because just no other option. It won't sending her back won't end up in anything good for her. So yeah, but yeah, they head over to China, where they set up to get a boat, but the investigator meets up with Passepartout and gives him a really nasty drink in order to get him in order to get them to miss their boat.
Yeah, the investigator roofies him.
Yeah, because he wants to arrest Phileas Fogg, but he doesn't. So yeah, so he ends up in Japan before Phileas. Oh, the reason he doesn't Phileas doesn't get arrested is because he just takes a sailboat over to Yada, what do they call it? To Yokohama. So they arrive a day after Passepartout, who has to make money there by performing in a Japanese theater routine where he does some gymnastics because he's a trained gymnast. And then they meet up and then they get a boat to San Francisco.
Yes. And this, like as you said earlier, the whole Asian excursion, like the whole Asian part of the film is very, very like white people playing Asian roles the whole way through. And it really it really annoys me because at the beginning of the movie, when they're doing like this, in at the travel place where they were getting their tickets, the travel agency or whatever, where they're getting their tickets, the gentleman selling them tickets says something kind of humorous about, oh, what does, not sneezing at a geisha girl, so not sneezing at a geisha girl, which then Passport 2 takes like as a, like this like serious like piece of advice. And so they do like this kind of slapstick comedy thing where like he's not supposed to sneeze at the like geisha girls, you know? And it's again, I'm really hypersensitive about how Western media treats like Asian culture and particularly Japanese culture because I think we consume a lot of Japanese media even here in the West, and kind of the understanding of geishas is very skewed because we don't have like the cultural tools I think here, or like the cultural context to understand what that role is. And so then we get like these kind of oversexed or like, I don't know, just these very icky portrayals of geisha where it's like very male gaze but then kind of like mysterious and scandalous and like very like, I don't know, we lean into a lot of like the courtesan kind of prostitution flavors of that role in Japanese society without having really any context, like historical or cultural context for what it means to be a geisha really in Japan for real, right? And so it really made me very very angry because we were already doing like a lot of things incorrectly in this movie about Asian cultures and all the, you know, the POC cultures like we've been talking about this whole time. But this, like, my dad's half Japanese. I'm very white looking and I present like I'm a redhead, I'm tall. I present very, you know, privileged in my like in my physical appearance, but my grandfather is from Japan. And so we have kind of like in my family this disenfranchised cultural experience because I grew up Canadian and white and privileged, but then my grandfather was in an internment camp, right? Or his family rather, during World War II. So it's like, I don't know, I've been wrestling with these pieces of like my family identity and my cultural like identity because I'm a redhead. I've always felt like I belong to like the Scottish Irish side of my family, but not so much to the Japanese side of my family. And I'm trying to kind of unpack that and do that in a really respectful way, having conversations with my dad's father, my grandfather, my Japanese grandfather. And so then this this whole scene, I was just like, I hate it. I hate it so much because it is like, I think, you know, I don't present Asian, and I think it would be even inappropriate if I were to maybe do that, but I still have like a family connection. And so then it's really confusing personally to watch people who aren't, you know, like even have that much of a connection, make kind of a mockery out of Japanese culture, not understanding that there's a lot of kind of complex roles going on there. And I think it's really blatantly obvious during kind of when geishas are brought up because we really just don't understand. And then we have our whole like white purity culture kind of shit that we need to work through too, layered on top of that, not to mention like colonization and blah blah blah. Like there's just so much, and I could probably just continue talking about it for the whole time. But that, like, that piece where passport 2 is like not sneezing on these these Asian women, I'm like, okay, one, that's just nice manners. Don't sneeze on women, like especially like women, like, just don't sneeze on women. That's really gross. And two, like, I just don't like that it was like, let's make a big deal about these geisha women who are just going about their lives and are actually white women, right? Like, it was very confusing and frustrating for me.
I did find
Anyway, that's
one
that's my
yeah. I did find one actor that, appears to be actually Asian that's not like, I mean, an extra, but, like, not like, we know who he is. We have, like, a Mike Mazurki, which, I believe but he's playing a drunken Hong Kong dive is what his credited role is.
awesome.
But, yeah, I get what you're saying here because it's like, suddenly, you you're very nervous about it's not like them doing something you're very nervous about doing, and like them just doing it blatantly without thought of the issue. And it's like biracialism is like a very complex subject, and we've from a to a certain point, like people have made it complicated, and it's not
Yeah, well,
very
I
it's
think
yeah, it's been made to be something that's terrible.
I just
Yeah.
I liked what you said that it's like they took like they took something that you're right, that I'm nervous about, and that is quite complicated for me just personally as I work through some of these pieces, and then they just made like a mockery out of it and made it very like slapstick, and I don't know, I just it like it was gross. I did not like it. So, and like even the fact that the Asian actor that we can find a credit for is like a drunk, right? So then like another stereotype, another like problem, and yeah, anyway, it's just yeah.
So, oh, Buster Keaton's in this. That's another name I recognize. Uh, he plays a train conductor a little later.
Nerd.
So yeah, they take off from here to do San Francisco, where they arrive in the middle of a big fancy election. And I wish people were this excited about elections in real life. There's something about like a 19th century election where they made it like a big show, where they don't really do it anymore. Because I don't know. I don't know what it is.
No, I know what it is. It's because you used to be able to go for a drink with your local representative. That's what Hamilton taught me. Hamilton the musical. It's like I could have a drink with them, right? Like that's what we're missing from our today elections is that none of the people that are like, representatives for the party are people that I would want to go have a drink with necessarily. Anyway, that was a joke. I'm sorry, Kyle. Elections are serious. Please vote.
Yeah, I think this. I know. I have heard like stories of like politicians like buying like big barrels of beer and like bringing them down to a voting station and giving people drinks outside the voting station. I don't know. You're not allowed to do that anymore, but like there was a time where like politicians would like buy a bunch of booze and like hand people beers outside of voting stations. But I think to a degree we needed a bit more of that. Like maybe not exactly that, but like I think we need to treat it a bit more like it's a big holiday, and we don't. It's made boring,
No,
and
that's
yeah.
that's I like the idea of treating like elections as a holiday, right? Because then you would give people time off to actually go and vote like a full day, and you would, like turn it into this like hoopla and people would be excited. Like I kind of like that idea. I was just being really silly because we went to see Hamilton in New York before COVID, and that was one of my favorite lines from the musical is maybe I could have a drink with him. And I was like, yes, yes, this is what I also want from my politicians. But I don't know about the efficacy of, getting your voters boozed up. I don't think that's maybe best practice.
So they get on a train after like some shenanigans. Phileas tells Passepartout to go get some guns because America's dangerous, which it is. But uh,
Oof.
so
Oof. Kyle.
yeah, they know what they're getting into. They've watched this show before.
Call out America. Call out America.
We do this all the time. So yeah, Passepartout goes to get some guns. He comes back dressed like a complete bandito, like full on Western
Yeah,
Hispanic bandito,
it's not
just
good.
with like a.
It's bad.
it's it's almost kind of funny.
I mean, yeah, like it's all kind of funny because it's just so terrible. Like you just know that there's no way, like if a movie that like was nominated for this Oscar now, it would have none of this in it. So it's just like it's funny because of how much acclaim this movie got and how ridiculous it is. So I guess I kind of agree with you, but it's still bad. Like I'm just like, why does he look like that? Like it's like, oh my goodness. Anyway, let's get to my favorite part of the whole movie.
Yeah, one more thing before that. They take a train across a rickety bridge and destroy the bridge, which is probably just coming out of all their paychecks because you can't just destroy major infrastructure like that. Like they don't even make like an attempt to make it easier on the bridge. Cost the American taxpayer thousands of dollars. Yeah, and then they drive for a bit more, and then they get randomly attacked by natives.
No, no, first, Kyle, you missed the
Oh,
peaceful natives. you miss the peaceful indigenous people who had a peace pipe. Actually, okay, so I was watching this movie with my husband. I
Oh,
was watching with my husband Tyler, and Tyler is Cree First Nations, and presents as a person of color. And so we're watching this, and God bless him, or whatever deity bless him, like he was just being so patient and so kind as I'm like dying watching this movie. Thank you, Kyle. We're gonna have to go to years of marriage therapy to get over the ordeal you
I'm
put us through.
sorry.
Um, but we're at the scene, and all of a sudden you hear the very stereotypical like First Nations, like the I don't know, what do you like, yelling, I guess, the like the sound that you would make if you were a really like poorly educated child, and you would like squeal at the top of your lungs and like pat your mouth, right? Like that sound. So that sound, and then the train is like slowing down, and the conductor comes out and he's like, "Don't worry, these are the friendly ones. They have a peace pipe." And so Tyler and I are kind of bracing ourselves for this scene. And then what you see is the outside of the train, the conductor and the people who are shoveling like coal into the train are smoking a peace pipe with the indigenous peoples of the wherever they are. And and it's like they're all dressed, all the First Nations people are dressed up in like full regalia, which I'm like, okay, there's no way that this train of random people are important enough for like the chief and all of the peoples to come out like in full regalia. And so I say that to my husband, and my husband says, actually, the most unbelievable thing is that every single one of them has a peace pipe. And I'm like, oh yeah, like, 'cause that's again something that would not happen. They're just like, all the indigenous people are just holding on to their peace pipes. I'm like, no, that's not how that ceremony works. So again, like, just how cultural
And
appropriation
stopping
happens.
the entire goddamn train for this.
Well, and just like, why would they care?
Like, I'm like, they also show off the buffalo. They also pass some buffalo, and they don't show the train people shooting at the buffalo from the train car, which might have been a thing. Which not an unreasonable chance. I don't know the dates on that, but yeah, people would take pot shots at buffalo from the train car in order to kill the
That's
buffaloes, so they
horrible.
could,
Oh my goodness, white people are horrible.
yeah, so they could depopulate the entire Midwest from its ancestral peoples. Anyway, they're also calling them Indians in this, which obviously I'd make the joke that like, wait, you just met the Indians. You met them like 10 minutes, like 2 hours ago,
10
earlier in the
minutes ago.
movie.
Kyle. Yeah, like 2 hours ago at the beginning when we were sacrificing people to the thugs. Like, jeepers, it was longer than 10 minutes ago.
Like this would confuse an alien. Like if an alien was watching this movie, it's just like, wait, these guys are also Indians, but they have completely different culture. Like, because using, yeah, they also use the Washington football team slur, so that's also in there several times.
Mhm. Oh, we have a really messed up messed up, like, history here in North America, and I know this is a taking place in America, but it's, like, Canada too.
Yeah, and then they get attacked by a bunch of First Nations people randomly on the train
I
that's
think it's
moving
the
full
Sioux.
speed.
That's what.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they
mention
say
it's the
something
Sioux.
about, like, the Sioux are dangerous.
They say that, and I'm like, the Sioux? Like what? Like the Sioux? The Sioux are the okay, yeah. Yeah, they killed that one guy who came to go kill them, let's be honest. So basically self-defense. That's uh
Well, and
it's
just
especially weird.
what
Yeah.
my issue with this is that it was like, yeah, yeah, I understand why they're killing you. Like, you just, you built a train right through their homeland. Like, you suck. So, okay, I mean, I kind of don't think that they're like not justified at this point. Also, the Trail of Tears and all the other things that are happening.
Yeah, no, all justified. It's just a little weird that like they're doing like a high speed train robbery massacre thing they're attempting, apparently, which I don't get why.
Yes.
This don't make a lot of sense.
Well, I
Passepartout
think
gets
it's because
captured.
of I was just gonna say, I think it's because of like the whole cowboys and Indians thing, right? Like they're really leaning into this like Western, and that would have been very popular at the time, right? So like in the 50s, they are leaning into this Western like film story where it's cowboys and Indians and chasing and train heists or whatever. But it just it's yeah, it's so gross. And actually this is where I had a hard time continuing after this because after my husband's peace pipe comment, I was just like, fuck this movie. There is nothing redeemable about this movie.
I'm glad I only spent 99 cents on this. Passepartout gets captured. They have to go they miss their train to go save Passepartout, and that delays them, so they don't get to New York until like after schedule, so they're running low on time. Yeah, and that happens. They get on this boat, the Henrietta, which he initially takes south toward Venezuela because at this point this is the height of the them pretending Phileas Fogg is a bank robber, and so he's going south, and that's meant to like signify that he's running away. But it turns out he's just using it to pick up on a certain current in order to get across the ocean. But they run out of fuel, so they have to like strip the boat for parts. So they like burn everything on board, including like his cane and hat. And then they finally manage to
Oh
get to
no,
England.
not his cane and hat. What's Phileas Fogg without his cane and hat? Sorry. I didn't watch the
Yeah.
rest of it, Kyle, because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I
Fair enough.
couldn't bear it. It
Yeah.
was so bad.
Yeah. So they arrive back in England, and they're like rushing back to London in order to claim their prize when they get arrested by the inspector. Then what I said earlier happens. They hold them for like 12 hours and then let them out when it turns out they arrested the real criminal. Apparently that took them 80 days to do. They arrive back in London defeated. They have some conversations. They're all defeated. Eventually Auga proposes to Phileas Fogg, so Passepartout goes to grab a priest so they can arrange a wedding for tomorrow. And at this point, they realize that like they think they've arrived in England on Sunday, but then Passepartout sees a newspaper and sees that, oh wait, it's Saturday. We forgot that we passed the international date line, thereby gaining a day. So we still have 10 minutes to get to the Reform Club in order to claim our prize. So they do that.
Yay!
He has to like shove his way past some weird doomsday preacher or Puritan preacher, I don't know. He shoves his way past them. After a while, he's very polite about it. He arrives at the Reform Club, and just as the bell rings and wins his bet, they all congratulate him, and then Awuga shows up in the Reform Club, and he's just like, "Wait, you can't be in here. This is a men's only club." And she's like, "Well, what'll happen if a woman comes in here?" Well, that would signal the end of the British Empire. And then a big picture of Queen Victoria Falls, and I just laugh my ass off because
The best
apparently,
punchline of
yeah,
the entire movie. Oh man.
I want to make a
Okay.
joke about it being symbolic of like the Indian people leaving the British Empire is being symbolic of the end of the British Empire, and that was the joke. But I feel like I'm over explaining it at that point. This would be a very
I
this would be funnier in
yeah, we need
another
to work
movie that
on
wasn't
your
so racist.
yeah, we need to work on your delivery for jokes there, bud. But you're right. Like I actually am kind of disappointed I missed that one because I put up with so much crap all the way to the peace pipe ceremony. Um and that would have actually been like nice to see cuz down with imperialism. and colonialism.
And then the movie ends. It just cuts off right after that.
Yay!
Yeah.
Woo! The movie ends, and that was the best part. It was so
Yeah, it
fun for it
was
to be done. And then it can be burned in a trash bin for no one to ever see ever again because it has no cultural merit. None whatsoever. Sorry, Jules Verne.
it won 5 Oscars. I want to remind everybody.
So horrible. So like
5
I just
wins, 3 nominations, beating out the 10 Commandments
like
and The King and I.
do you think when they're making the decisions for the Oscars they think, "I wonder how this will age?" Because like because that did not age well and it just shows you what the values were of the time, right? Like it reflects on where society was at and what the values are. And so I'm wondering like, okay, and you know, 35 years from now or 50 years from now, what are we going to look back on and be like, "Ooh, that was really bad," you know? I guess, oh man, the 50s would have been like 70 years from now, right? That's how math works?
Yeah, yeah.
64
I
years
do.
from now? Anyway,
I think I do have one more movie in the 50s, but that's not till February.
and I'm not
Yeah.
doing that one.
No, no,
Dibs
I have
out.
you scheduled for. No, I have you scheduled for a different week that week.
Oh, thank
Your last step,
goodness.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah. Your
this
the last episode you'll be on is the one after that.
this
So
really put our friendship to the test, and I don't know if we could withstand another movie from the 50s. Like I think my limit is the 80s. Like I can watch me some Breakfast Club and some 16 Candles, but like never again am I doing a film all the way back from the 50s unless I know it's one that I'll already like.
yeah, this is also weird because like last week we did a big First Nations movie with like mostly First Nations actors and directed by like a First Nations director, and it was like a kind of like a weirdly cultural moment of like appreciating First Nations culture, and then I had to review this immediately after.
And it was like, ooh, back to back, these did not pair well.
Yeah,
Honestly though, like I really wanted to give this movie a chance because I do like the story concept. I think it's really quite it could be quite a fantastic story. I think that it's very dated for the time, yes. Because of course it was written in like the 1850s or whatever. And then this was the 1950s when the movie was made. But like I I really wanted to give it some points, but I'm like, holy moly, it was way too long. It was horrible for like sexism and racism and just so many other isms and and then it was boring. Like it was really boring.
it'd be nice if this was like a 2-hour movie and like the cultures were portrayed accurately. I think that'd actually be kind of neat. There's something to be said about like, hey, this is like us visiting like 5 different neighbors and like getting like an idea of like a couple different cultures to like educate the masses a little bit. And that would be almost kind of neat. And like this is kind of annoying. Like this is kind of like the most annoying aspects of any like 50s era or like any historical movie where they just make shit up and lie about it and like don't they want to like show people off but they want like a spectacle because apparently these people's cultures aren't interesting enough as it is like oh yeah, let's
Yeah.
take this beautiful culture and like just do the dumbest piece of it because white people are stupid and they can't be bothered to and they can't stand looking at people who are different than them, which is just like a very ignorant view because rich people make movies and they're assume we're all like them.
Yeah. Well, or just like I even what I was saying about like I'm usually fairly generous even with movies that I don't like. Because I think that, creating is it's a complicated process, right? Like you're a content creator and I'm a content creator and we know that um even for the bad content that there is kind of a personal stake in it. And so I try to be fairly generous. I'm not like usually the type of person who's just like scathing reviews on stuff. But so like when I was earlier watching the movie, like the scene where they have the champagne and he like scoops mountain snow off the like peak of a mountain. I really was like, there were lots of questions that arose, but I was kind of thinking, oh, that's kind of whimsical, like they're in this hot air balloon, how lovely for them. Like I'm trying to find something that's, I don't know, redemptive, or like something like, oh, maybe the costumes are kind of cool. Like I was trying really hard, even just thinking it looks kind of like some of my other favorite movies, maybe that's enough. And then we got to the scene with the train chase and the First Nations people, and we'd already lived through like the horrible portrayal of like Asian cultures and Indian culture, and I was just like, no, I give up. Like there's nothing that I can say or do to redeem this movie, and I cannot believe it won 5 Oscars. Like that just makes me feel kind of ill because I'm like, that's what we wanted to like glorify. Ugh.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that it
Yeah.
okay, are we talking about our reviews for it now? Like, are we gonna give it a
You know,
number
yeah,
review?
you
Because
go do
I
your
wanna
thing.
talk about, okay,
Go ahead.
so it has 6.5 on, like, IMDb or something, or Rotten Tomatoes, so it still skews higher than 5 on the rating websites, and I was like, "For real?" Like, are those reviews from 1950? Because I would not put it that high. I don't know, what are you thinking about for a 1 out of 10?
Yeah, it's weird. Like I can't even see like a really like ignorant person like not picking up on what this movie's doing. Like even like we're both pretty educated about this stuff, but I can't even see like an ignorant person like not understanding what's going on here and how they're being manipulated and how they're being talked down to.
Yeah.
But
Well, or just even that,
I'm
like,
yeah.
the movie is boring by itself. The movie, like, by itself is boring, so how does it get a 6.5? Anyway, sorry, I asked you a question and then I immediately interrupted you. That's how conversations with me go, so go ahead, Kyle.
Like I see like some of the like cinematography stuff. This is obvious. This is probably like fairly advanced for like a 1950s movie. The balloon work is pretty interesting and there's a lot of like real interesting shots at least for the time. But yeah, I don't know that it should beat out the 10 Commandments, which I haven't seen, but it's just like
I wanna make
I feel like that's
I wanna make a
yeah.
Bible joke about nothing beating up the Ten Commandments, but I'm just being silly. Yeah, I don't know, I've never seen that movie, so I can't speak to it, but, like, 6.5 seems really high.
I'm leaning probably toward a 2.
That seems generous to me, but I
Yeah,
feel like
maybe.
you're coming at it, well, you're coming at it from kind of like a cinematography, like, that there's maybe some, like, qualities of it being they're like, when you're thinking about best picture, that you might be thinking about, like, how the cinematography is playing into best picture, right? I honestly, I'm thinking, like, negative 6.5 just to spite the 6.5 it has on whatever IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, I can't remember which one it was, but I'm like, I just wanna go, like, the full opposite of that because I'm so
I mean, it
frustrated
can go
with this
0,
whole
but
film. No, no,
I
I'm
think the
I'm
lowest
going
we can
negative
say it is 1.
6.5. I think I can make up my rules, and these are my rules, Kyle, and I'm gonna just say it's exactly opposite, and it should have
I
gotten
think we're
worse picture.
rounding to the lowest real number or whatever the math term is.
Negative numbers are real numbers.
Rational number? Is
I don't
that
know,
it?
negative numbers are integers. I just know that word, so grade 7 math was a long time ago for me.
Yeah, I think for context, I think I gave Manos Hands of Fate a 2. I might have given that a 3 actually, which is like
Okay,
one
well,
of the worst movies of all time,
I'm sticking
apparently.
with my negative 6.5, and if you wanna say that's a 0, then whatever, but I'm saying negative 6.5. That's like a negative point for every culture they appropriate and also the sexism, so there we go.
Yeah, that probably checks out. Yeah, actually. If you're like deducting, let's say it's a 0 and then you deduct a point every time it's racist against a culture, that probably brings it to -6. Yeah.
Exactly. So there. Haha, I justified my decision and it stands.
So that's the end of the review.
Sustained.
So next week Cody will be back. We're gonna review Tusk, which is a Kevin Smith movie, part of the True North trilogy. We'll revisit the sub theme of the season in November, and then Victoria will also be back in November. I'm giving her October off.
Whoop whoop.
So yeah, we'll see her then. Tell them where they can find you, Victoria.
All right. Thank you so much, Kyle. This is the real reason I do all of this. So laboring through a 3-hour movie and then talking with you for 2 hours is really just so I can plug my stuff at the end. So thank you. I am a writer. My name is Victoria Koops, and you can find my writing. My writing website is victoriakoops.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Victoria Koops Writes. I have really exciting things in the works right now, working on trying to get my first novel published and maybe get an agent. So hopefully there's going to be big news about that coming up. So make sure you go to my website and my social media, like me there, and stay tuned for my exciting projects coming out, hopefully.
Yeah, if we're lucky, maybe you'll get like an announcement, for like a distribution announcement by the time we're done the season in March.
That would be so wicked. I'm so like, let's just put that out
That
there
would
in the
be fun. Maybe,
universe.
hopefully,
And
hopefully,
It
yeah,
would be super fun.
that'd
Anyway,
be cool.
thank you so much, Kyle, for thank you so much, Kyle, for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome, and I'll see you soon. You guys can find me at Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast on Facebook, Casey Cinema Pod at Twitter. You can also find my Kyle Brokenshire Twitter at Lord Brokenshire. Yeah, and check out the YouTube channel, leave out 5-star reviews, circulate the links. And yeah, we will see you next week. And we're stopping.